forgiving, but not laying down and being like, okay,
I'm a doormat.
hurt me all over again. That's why I say you had healthy boundaries with it, because yeah, if you just forgive and ignore like like for me, it was like, I didn't realize my dad was a narcissist. If you forgive someone, a quality of a narcissist would be it's all about them and they're not taking responsibility. So if you forgive someone, because forgiveness is for you, to me, and the definition would be letting go of the resentment that that lives inside of you. But if you have a different definition and you forgive someone and are like, okay, you're not going to tell me the truth about that, but okay, just keep not telling me the truth about things. And I'm just going to be, that's like, you're not honoring yourself. So that's living a bit in delusion or denial. So I'm always saying, if you forgive someone and they don't take responsibility, they don't own up to it, don't trust them again. Make different decisions. I took my dad to court for wrongful death, but I didn't do it from punishment. I seriously did it from self-honor. I need to love myself enough to forgive him for me, and take him to court for me, to just listen to what I need. I need to stand up to him. In that case, that's what I needed to do.
That's so great, Brenda. I think what you just said about like for you, right? So, I have someone in my family who's been fighting with my aunt for 10 years over something. They probably don't even remember what it is. They've just been at it for so long. And I said to my mom, I said, Mom, why don't you just drop it? Just forgive my aunt, And she's like, well, she doesn't deserve it. She hasn't asked for it. But, to your point, the forgiveness is not necessarily for them. It's for yourself.
Yeah, she doesn't even have to tell her. She doesn't even have to tell her. Energetically, she could just, I'm going to drop it for me and then see what shows up instead. What's going to happen is she'll have a space, an opening, like an ability to have better people in her life. It's never like forgive and let the person in. And it's never like forgive and tell them. I never told my dad. After I took him to court for wrongful death, he skipped town. And then a couple of years later, he passed. But I did what I needed to do for myself. I did all the journaling. I did a ceremony of release, which I perform and present in my show. I spoke with him on a soul level. Like I did all these techniques so that I was clear. So also that when he passed, I was clear, because another thing that happens is people won't forgive. It's going to happen in your family if then one of them, your aunt dies or something like that, then people, I've worked with clients who feel remorse, or they're like in a relationship with an adult parent who's really abusive to them because they don't feel guilty after the person dies, but they're being abused by that parent. It's like, well, how about you just forgive yourself, you love yourself, you apply these techniques, you send love to the other person. So if you do that, even if you don't have them in your life, you're not going to feel guilty, or if you do, you'll be able to care for yourself,
Yeah. So if you could, narrow it down, sort of the 3 basic steps or like tips and advice that people can take to work on this on a particular relationship or for themselves, what would you recommend?
I'm going to say with the first step, I have a 3-step forgiveness process, and let me break down the first step at least, and then maybe I'll introduce the second step. The thing that I didn't do in this order, and it's why I wrote my book, then I put it in there, and it's so important, is what I didn't do was deal with my anger in a healthy, conscious way. What I did is what other people do, is I shut down, and then I would open up and say, oh, I have to forgive. And then I would shut down again. And then I would say, and all of that made that anger linger. It made me act out in addictions. It makes a lot of people do that. For me, it was overeating and over exercising, because what would happen is I would gain weight, and then I wouldn't be thinking about the thing I really needed to think about, which was my father and this dynamic and this relationship and the forgiveness. Instead, I would, it was like something else would hijack my attention. And I think that's what happens with addictions and stuff. So I did the healthy anger release years later, and that was what really healed me. It allowed me to get to the next level. So I would say right in the first step, it's not denying your anger, but it's not justifying it. Getting the help you need. Like for me, not only did I go through a 2-year master, not only did I go to therapy, but a lot of therapists are afraid to really hold for the anger, right? They kind of get you out of your emotions into your head. So I went to my master's degree in spiritual psychology, And then that was a 2-year program where I learned all these techniques that I use with my clients, like freeform writing out your emotions, but then never rereading, because that it's different from journaling. You don't want to re-anchor in those emotions. You want to get rid of them. So that was really helpful. I did all these energetic exercises, did some, physical shamanic journeys, things like that. And then I went to an anger workshop after that really, really helped me, like watching people like hit something with a bataka, it's called, and just really like these primal screams coming out of me. And it was after that, and then I also combined it with a forgiveness ceremony that I did on top of a mountain. I took my dad's hat, a hat I had of his. I wrote this poem because I realized that the anger I had for him, like my dad and I are one in some way, or we all are, that if I had that anger at him, I was being angry at myself. So I didn't want that anymore. I threw his hat over the mountainside, and it was amazing. It was like energetically something lifted. So the combination of those things really helped me to release all that anger. So that's in step 1, and it was all in a healthy way. I wasn't hurting someone else. I wasn't hurting myself. So that's really important. So that also that anger doesn't leak out toward other relationships. You push back so that you can have intimacy in your life. And that's really important. But in that stage 1, you are a victim. Like you embrace, everyone's like, I don't want to be a victim. I'm not a victim. But when you're like that, you actually are a victim, and you want to be a victim. And 1, get it all out so it doesn't come forward. And then step 2 is actually giving up your need to be right. Once you get out that anger, once you feel fully into the victim, then the next step that's really important is to get out of that and be into, I don't need to be right. And then that's where you can find compassion for people. So I could find compassion for the fact that my father had a messed up relationship. Like growing up, his mother was just awful, and all the tools he didn't have. And I could imagine him, this is technique, as a little child, and the things that happened to him. So not to condone what he did, but to have compassion and have my heart open so that I could finally also forgive him. And that would be semantically what they would teach at my school was, you're forgiving the judgment, forgiving an action. You're forgiving the judgments within yourself, because that's what you have control over. So I'm not saying I forgive you for killing my mother. I'm saying I forgive myself for judging myself as holding on to this. I forgive myself for judging you as evil because you did this. Because what I have in control is those judgments. I can let that go.
Amazing. Wow. Amazing. Well, we have 5 more minutes. You want to maybe throw us one more?
Sure. Let's see. Self-love, self-forgiveness is a really, really important thing. So you would think, why would I have to forgive my father? And this would be, appropriate for people who are on here with marriages. Like, why do you have to forgive yourself for some spouse that, took advantage of you, took all the money, wouldn't let you see your kid, like all that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're in blame, you're being a victim to it, and you're not taking responsibility that you chose this person, whether or not they, weren't appearing like they were when you met them. The key is actually to take responsibility for our lives. So for me, I'm not taking responsibility for the fact that my father took my mother's life. I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I didn't see certain things. I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I was in disbelief. I'm not saying a lot of us are in disbelief when things happen, but I'm consciously saying I forgive myself for judging myself as being stupid. Like literally, I forgive myself for judging myself as being naive. I forgive myself. And I even had to I forgive myself for judging myself as loving and trusting my father. And then going to the reframe. The reframe is, well, of course I did. He was my father. So, but that was all under everything. Like I didn't know that I was so mad at myself, even though that happened outside of me, so it's self-love is so important, because then once you let go of the anger, you can let more self-love in. You can stop feeling stupid because you trust somebody, but you have to take responsibility. Like, especially in relationships, I chose that person for whatever reason. I had low self-esteem. I just loved their beauty. I didn't see, you know what I'm saying? Just take responsibility. Responsibility, you're a victim, and then you can be empowered. And then you would apply self-forgiveness as so much. Like it's really an inside job. I find we can't even forgive someone else until we really forgive and love ourselves. Like, same thing with love. You have to love yourself to get back what the amount of love you have for yourself. So that's a big one.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're talking about this because, going back to the topic, marriage and men, I think this is such a important piece that we forget about. As humans, we go into survival, right? And so it's counterintuitive for us to take these sort of additional steps that are going to go and save our marriage. This reminds me of a phone call that I had a couple weeks ago with a girlfriend of mine. Hadn't seen her in about 10 years. And at the last time I spoke to her, her and her husband were trying to have a baby. And when I saw her the other day or spoke to her, I said, how are things? She's like, oh, enjoying being single. And I was like, oh, you're single. And she's like, oh yeah, I got divorced, 2-3 years ago. And I said, I'm curious, like what happened? And she said one word to me. She goes, pride. And I thought about it. I mean, she didn't go into it, but I mean, I can guess. And I can, and I could just see how we are so just like, going back to the fight or flight, like we're so designed to just keep surviving. And when someone hurts us, we keep building up those walls until we can't even see each other anymore. And then, people get to a point where we're going, well, you know what? The wall is just too tall. It's too strong. We can't overcome this. So let's just, hand in all our chips and just call it a day. When really, there's such a huge impact, especially when there's kids involved. And, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is, we just need those skills and that level of self-awareness and humility and forgiveness to really, anything is possible. You could forgive anyone for anything, no matter how terrible it is. It's really just for us to get clear and find peace within ourselves and forgiving ourselves first. And then that will give us space to forgive other people. That's really what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, because also it's like, I'm not even saying people must stay together. Like, yes, when you have kids, it would be great if that motivated you enough to change your behavior so that you honor and love each other, so that your child sees that. But I would never want to be like, I ended that for pride, because to me, it's like, I would want to come to a place of, I'm not going to have that shield up. I'm going to make a decision from a place that's just pure love, because otherwise you carry that with you, like white left. Yeah, it's about doing the inner work, and then from that place, making a decision. Did you end the marriage because it just was unworkable and you just couldn't figure out a way together, or one person was doing the work and the other person wasn't? But nobody's taught these skills, Nobody taught. They're just like, you can't just get over things. I don't think,
Yes. And this is why we're doing this summit.
Exactly.
This is it.
I want to say one thing before because people might be wondering why I have a picture in the back, and so or who is that woman? That painting is a painting of my mother, and I start my one woman show dressed as her in the blonde wig and everything like that. So it's also part of my set. So people aren't like, what? That's so weird.
And did you paint that?
No, it was actually a portrait. A really good friend of my mother's, who was an artist in the 70s, painted it of her. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. And thank you so much, Brenda, for joining us today. Who you are for me is like a courageous warrior that is just like unleashed. And, I love that you're bringing this out into the world and, and sharing it with people. And I'm clear that, part of this is also part of the healing process for you.
Oh, in the beginning, it was so healing for me, like telling my story. And then at a certain point, it shifted to really being healing for other people. But that said, even when I perform, specifically when I perform my one woman show, when I jump into the character of my father and mother, it is healing, because they're no longer just one dimensional. It's about them being full people with their own dreams and stuff like that. So that can be really healing.
Yeah. And like what I'm hearing too is like honoring both of them.
Yeah. Honoring my family story,
Yeah.
it's just a story.
So great, Brenda. Now, before I let you go, do you have anything that we can share with our viewers that will really help them in this journey of forgiveness?
Well, I am sharing with your viewers that 5-part mini course, the 5 top reasons to never forgive and why you must. And what it is, it's basically some of those things that I just said about anger, or it's just too horrible. Why should you? But it breaks it down, and I give an example of why it's hurting you, and then I give specific exercises based on each one. So you have
Awesome.
that, I'll get that to you.
Perfect. Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in getting this awesome gift from Brenda, it will be included in your in the recap email later this evening. Thank you so much, Brenda. It was so great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks. Forgive and be free.
Yes. See you later.